Good morning. All right, everybody ready to get started? Woo! It's rowdy in here today. Yeah, I cannot whistle. My mother told me it's genetic, that my grandmother couldn't whistle either, so I cannot whistle at all. I can't even do the... No, I can't. But my sweet mother told me it was genetic, not anything, I could control. What's that? Oh, thank you. All right. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Although looking at that bacon, I'm pretty sure y'all are here for that and not my great presentation. That bacon looks amazing. So today we're going to talk about why sell now. We all know it's a seller's market, so there's no epiphany there. But we're going to talk about the conversations that we're having with potential sellers, right? What is the narrative? And the narrative has been for the past year how crazy this market is, right? Recently, there were some local real estate professionals, not Caine agents, on a local news station. So this wasn't when Caine was on Fox News, but on another local news station about 2 weeks prior. They interviewed 3 agents from our market. And I was getting dinner ready, heard it was real estate, stopped and looked, and was in awe of the narrative. The words used repeatedly throughout the interview, and this was not the news shifting it because these were interviews. Insane, insanity, chaos. I've never in my career had no listings, and I have no listings. And that was my aha moment of, wow, that's what we're putting out there. As real estate professionals, that's what we're living, right? That's our world. That's our perspective. But that shouldn't be the perspective that we're selling to the market, right? And so that's our focus today, is to really talk about what's your narrative. Because that narrative is critically important as people are considering whether to buy or sell right now. So these are probably objections you've heard over the past year from sellers, and these are just a few. I'm sure you've heard others. But for example, I want to sell, but there's nothing to buy. How many people have heard that? Probably everybody in this room, more than once. I want to wait until spring market. We've been hearing that for years, right? I would need to sell to buy, and my house is appreciating so much that I don't want to lose out on that. How are we responding to these questions? Are we saying, you're right, it's crazy, there's nothing to buy? We might have done that in the past. You don't have to raise your hands for that. So why is it a great time to sell? That's what we're going to focus on today, so that you can rewrite your narrative as you're talking to potential sellers and buyers. So the first reason why it's a great time to sell, and you all know this, the number of homes on the market is still low. So this is the inventory of homes for sale from GGAR's reports. This is the year-end report. So this is at the end of December, what the data look like. This is 2021 on the end. The column on the other side is 2019. So we all know that inventory is significantly down. We've experienced it. Buyers and sellers know that, right? No epiphany there, but for a seller, go back to high school economics, supply and demand of anything. Supply and demand of toilet paper, right? Think about toilet paper. You never see toilet paper on sale anymore because there's a big demand for it because the supply is low. Same thing with positioning a house for sale, okay? The other component of this supply and demand is inventory is low and there's a lot of buyers out there. Again, all of this I know we know, but hang in there with me. So this is a showing time report, not specific to Greenville. This is the Southeast region. So we can see, again, comparing 2019, in our last column, 2019 inventory was here and showings are here. We have the opposite going on with showings and inventory. So showings are up and inventory's down, right? Again, supply and demand. This gives you the breakdown monthly of showing activity. So in December, which is traditionally a slow month in our business, traditionally, we can see that showings were up almost 12% in December. So the buying activity, the seasonality is still there, but it is becoming minimized. But you can look and see that in the spring market, even February and March, things start to tick up from a buying standpoint, right? So if you're a seller and you're thinking about waiting, going back to supply and demand, if there's less inventory on the market right now and buyers still looking, you don't want to wait. You don't want to wait until April, right? Because there is going to be more inventory as people wait for the traditional spring market. So as you talk to potential sellers, here's a script for you to work off of, okay? Scripts are made to be made your own and not sound like a script, and we are going to send all of these out with the recording when we wrap up today. So today's limited supply of houses for sale is putting sellers in the driver's seat, especially right now at this time of year. There are far more buyers in the market than there are homes available. Listing your house now makes it the center of attention. As a seller, that means when it's priced correctly, you can expect it to sell quickly, get multiple strong offers this season. Experts are projecting more inventory will come on the market as we move through the winter months. Selling now may help you maximize the return on your investment before your house has to face more competition from sellers. And that more inventory is the seasonality that we have typically seen in the business. And again, looking at that seasonality, right, there's more showings means there's more listings. Now, in that script, it says there are far more buyers in the market than there are homes available. One of the objections you're probably dealing with is that sellers are saying, I don't want to sell because there's nothing to buy. So what's the narrative as we have these conversations? It's a great time to buy. Yes, inventory is low, right? We've looked at this previously, but this is where you need to change your narrative. Inventory is different than new listings. They are completely different. Inventory is something that sits on the shelf. Doesn't mean that the supply is not hitting the market. It just means it's being consumed quickly. So same data from GGAR, you look at new listings is actually higher than it was in 2019. That's where the narrative needs to change. It's not about inventory. New listings, more new listings are hitting the market than we have seen ever before. And this is where you need to set your expectations for clients as they hit the market. The inventory's hitting the market or the listings are hitting the market. We need to put you in your best position possible because they're moving very quickly. That's Spartanburg's numbers. Okay. This, again, is just supply and demand. So I want you to, your takeaway is to just recognize there is a difference between new listings and inventory. Part of that narrative is there's not only more new listings, we've had record sales. So this is data from 2007 when the market, so 2007 is before the market crashed, so to speak. And this is through 2021. You can see that we had record sales. This is GJR data. We had record sales this past year. Even when the market was fantastic in 2005, 2006, we have surpassed that. So if there were record sales last year, with that being the case, it's hard to say there's nothing to buy. The listings are there. They are just moving more quickly than we have historically seen before. What, as a buyer, you should be more concerned about than inventory or listings is affordability. That is impacted by raising prices and raised mortgage rates. So this is a buyer's purchasing power. As mortgage rates go up, what they can afford becomes less and less. That, compiled with appreciation, makes affordability a much bigger concern for a buyer and seller than inventory or new listings. And we're going to talk about this more in just a second. So that was all under number one. Number two, your equity, another reason you want to sell now is your equity is growing in record amounts. And you may have heard this objection or hesitation. I would need to buy, and my house is appreciating so much that I don't want to lose out on that. Has anyone heard that before? So your equity is growing in record amounts. Homeowners are sitting on record amounts of equity thanks to today's price appreciation. According to the latest report from CoreLogic, the average homeowner gained $56,700 in equity over the past 12 months. That much equity can open doors for you to make a move. If you've been holding off on selling because you're worried about how rising prices will impact your home search, rest assured your equity can help fuel your next move. It may be just what you need to cover a large portion, or if not all, of a down payment on your next move. And if somebody is moving and purchasing, not renting, they're going to have appreciation in their next property. So they're not losing out on appreciation, they're basically cashing out on their appreciation. Third, while rising, mortgage rates are still historically low. So, again, going back to the affordability piece, this affects them as buyers, but also as sellers, because the number of buyers as affordability is adjusted can impact the buyers that could potentially purchase their home. So when we look at mortgage rates, historically in the 90s, they were 8.12, 2000, 6.27. Right now, they are on the rise, and they're on the rise quickly, but they're still lower than we have historically seen. So at the beginning of January, they were around 3.1. As of today, they're around 3.625. To show you how quickly they're moving, and make sure you're keeping your pulse on this as professionals and experts, because they are changing very quickly. When I started this presentation, when I started preparing this, it was about 2 weeks ago, they were at 3.45. So they're moving very, very quickly. And of course, that can impact affordability, but it creates an urgency. So in talking to potential sellers and in changing your narrative, what does that look like? In January of last year, mortgage rates hit the lowest point ever recorded. Today's rates are starting to rise, but that doesn't mean you've missed out on locking in a low rate. Current mortgage rates are still far below what they've been in recent decades. Even with mortgages rising above 3, it's still worth taking advantage. You just want to do it sooner as opposed to later. Again, creating that urgency for people. Experts are projecting rates will continue to rise through this year, and when they do, it will cost more to purchase your next home. Number 4, home prices are rising with time, right? We talked about the appreciation from CoreLogic. Now that was on a national level. Appreciation last year was about $56,000 for people. Locally, let's look at what that means. This is GGAR data. Homes across GGAR appreciated just over 14%. Nationally, that number is 17%. So we're pretty in line with the average. What they're projecting for this coming year is that homes will continue to appreciate, probably not appreciate at the same level we saw this past year. They're projecting nationally almost 6%, okay? Now, what that looks like for Greenville, we don't know. Greenville obviously is on the radar, and Spartanburg as a great place to move. We're seeing a lot of relocation, so our numbers could be higher than the average. But what we do know is homes will continue to appreciate. We also know that mortgages, from everything we've heard, are going to continue, mortgage rates are going to continue to increase throughout this year. We're seeing it already. Yesterday or last week on the news, there was an article about, and I saw this several places, the Federal Reserve is signaling even more increases in March, right? So if you have those people on the fence waiting for spring market, you need to pick up the phone and have the conversation that they need to move sooner as opposed to later. This is what it looks like from a purchasing power standpoint, right? Because most sellers are going to buy, but it also impacts the buyers who are looking at their home. Their buyer pool could be impacted as affordability changes. So right now, we're at 3 points, let's say we're between 3.5 and 3.75. The difference in that is about $7,500 in terms of what somebody could afford. So home prices are going to continue to increase. This is the script or the dialogue or the narrative as you're talking to potential sellers. If you're selling so you can move into a bigger home or downsize, you want to consider moving now before rates and prices rise further. If you're ready, you have an opportunity to get ahead of the curve by purchasing your next home before rates and prices climb higher. Lastly, another reason to sell now is there will never be a better time to move up or move down. This is what that could potentially look like as you have conversations. If you're moving into a larger, more expensive home, consider doing it now. Prices are projected to appreciate by approximately 5 to 6% over the next 12 months. That means it will cost you more if you wait. You can also lock in your 30-year housing expense with a mortgage rate in the mid-3s right now. If you're thinking of selling this year, you may want to do it now instead of waiting. Very similar script for people downsizing. If you've been thinking about downsizing, consider doing it now. Your home appreciated in record amounts over the past few years. That much equity can open doors for you. If you've been holding off on selling because you're worried about how rising prices will impact your home search, we have a lot of sellers in that boat right now. Rest assured your equity can help fuel your next move. It may just be what you need to cover a large portion, if not all, of your down payment on your next purchase. And again, prices are projected to increase. So these, again, we will email these out, but this is to help you change your narrative. It's getting rid of those words such as chaotic, insane, there's no inventory, there's no listings. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So as you walk out of here today, think about the new words that you want to use as you describe the market. Active, efficient, fast-paced, high velocity, incredible. Other words that y'all can think of? Well, our friend David Seaver is always ahead of the curve, and this is one thing I know that he says. You cannot have a shortage and also record number of sales. I like to use the term fast inventory. So that's
stole that from somebody.
I know, but I'm trying to give you credit, David. David may have stolen it, but I was trying to make him look like the hero. It is our job to set the narrative to our friends and clients. So, why is it a great time to sell? We talked about 5 reasons. And really, it's not just a great time to sell. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to sell, and that should be your new narrative. If you're thinking about selling your home in 2022, you have a once in a lifetime opportunity at your fingertips. When selling anything, you always hope for strong demand for the item coupled with limited supply. That maximizes your leverage when you're negotiating the sale. Home sellers are in that exact situation right now. All right, questions, thoughts?
This might be a question for next week, but with the rising inflation, how do we see that affecting our market?
So everything projected for our market is very positive. Affordability is being impacted. I think we've all seen that, but it's being impacted everywhere. Greenville and Spartanburg are seeing a lot of cash buyers, for example, come to the market from other marketplaces, which you've all experienced in multiple offers. So that impacts affordability with the interest rates, but in terms of inflation impacting it, really the inflation and what's going on is sort of Greenville is a little bit in Spartanburg of its own little area. You know, again, 60 Minutes covered us, lots of people coming to this area who are choosing to work their jobs from wherever, and not just places like Greenville, but places that have a better quality of life. So while inflation might affect some markets, I don't think that it's necessarily going to impact us the same way.
We've seen new construction rising. So we were at a place before 2008, you know.
Yes.
And we reached that level where we surpassed what we were doing in comparison with 2008 as far as new construction.
That is a great question. So John Hunt will be here, not next sales meeting, the 15th. And he's going to talk about that, but no. I talked to him before this presentation, and he basically said we are so far in the hole from a inventory standpoint for new construction that he doesn't see it in the near future where we're going to come out of that.
Yeah, so we're a decade behind. We've talked about that for a long time. The inflation piece, I think a couple things to remember about this market. So today, compared to 6 months ago, are building costs up or down? They're up. So, I mean, that's remarkable. You think 6 months ago, building costs were through the roof. We're doing a project, and I met with Gary Caldwell last week from Caldwell Construction. We repriced the entire project, and material costs are up. So, you know, this impact that we've seen on building costs that started 6 to 8 months ago, it's not coming down right now. And so, I mean, talking about insulation for roofing, and I mean, just on and on and on, material prices continue to rise through the roof. So I think that's something that we need to be extraordinarily mindful of. You mentioned the market too, not to, yeah, everything Amanda said is absolutely spot on. I think you're getting ready to see some headlines nationwide as it relates to the first quarter in home sales. So are home sales going to be up or down? They're going to be down. So literally the first quarter, when you look, first quarter last year, keep in mind, was up 30% nationwide, like huge increases because of the pandemic. So much activity was pushed into the second half of the year. So I think you're going to see really first and second quarter, as numbers come out, you're going to start to see really decreased home sales. And I think it's going to make national news. I bet John Hunt will be talking about it. But keep in mind, we have a false baseline, because the first quarter of last year was just absolutely off the charts. So I think that's another thing
And
we
that's
need to be
where,
really
again, you have
mindful
to
of.
control the
You gotta
narrative, right?
Control the narrative,
As
right?
things shift.
Q1 of 2021 was an absolute anomaly. So I think that's the next trend from a headlines perspective we'll see coming out. We can't see that nationally. We can see it in our numbers. We can't see it locally until January reports, which January will report, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks from now within the MLS. But I mean, that's what we're hearing from our peers around the country. Barry, you had a question.
No, I was just going to say, I spoke with a builder yesterday, and he's doing a new build for clients, and there was a slight decrease, he said, in the middle of the fall, really, but they're skyrocketing. The lumber is skyrocketing.
It really is.
Other questions?
Do we see any hope of that changing? Is there a projected time when that will stabilize?
So I'm
Prices are never
not
gonna come
the
down.
person to report on that. A lot of people say it's the next recession that's going to stabilize inflation and price increases. I mean, you look at it across the board, and they report 6 or 7% inflation, right? That's what they're reporting. I mean, that's wrong. Are your prices up 6 or 7%? Is beef up 6 or 7%? No, it's up like 20 something, right? And so you see this across the board. I think prices continue to rise, and I'm not an economist, but I don't see that correcting itself overnight. And so I think that's sort of the new normal we've been living in, coming out of a monetary policy that has been in place to control inflation for over a decade, coming out of the recession.
You want to tell them about chicken wings?
Yeah, the price of chicken wings is through the roof. This is a great article
I know
that I read
because
yesterday.
Stephen told me, but my husband, it's all about the chicken wings.
So here's the ironic thing that we're dealing with, right? The price of chicken wings is up 6x. What's the rest of the chicken up? Nothing. Nobody wants the rest of the chicken. So there's this huge issue in poultry prices right now, because everybody wants the chicken wings and nobody wants the breast or the thighs. And it takes 3 chickens to get a dozen wings. And so you have all of this extra other white meat.
See, he could be an economist.
Good.
All right.
Daily.
Sorry, back to housing. Any other, Jane, did you have a question? All right, any other questions? I hope that information was helpful. We will send that recording out. We will also send the PowerPoint out and the scripts. Again, I know script is kind of a dirty word, but the narrative for you to make it your own. I don't think you want to do all the announcements?
No.
Okay.
I know I'm doing one.
First off, my first announcement is I made it through without messing up the clicker. Did anyone notice that? So far. Hold on. Okay. So big tip of the week. Last week was about sight unseen. Obviously, we're seeing more and more and more of this in our market as people from all over want to come to Greenville and Spartanburg, please, please, please do everything you possibly can to protect yourself in these situations. It is so scary. And, you know, you are going to be the first person they blame after closing when the property isn't what they want. So there are a couple things, some best practices that we suggest, not only for sight unseen, but you really should be doing this in any situation. One is the acknowledgement of professional services. This is in dotloop. It's an amazing form. If you are not using this, you should be. It is what will protect you when things turn, because they do turn. And it talks about, you can see very bold at the top, at closing, the buyer accepts the home in as-is condition. So you should be using this with all your buyers, not just sight unseen. It talks about the inspections and things that they should do as part of their process. And it explains why. And this is a form that they would sign and you have if you ever need it. But it's not only to protect you, but it helps educate them on the process. The other one is the acknowledgement of property condition. So this is something that you would tie into the walkthrough to make sure that they are accepting the property in that condition. So these two forms are critically important in protecting yourself, but also setting good expectations for your buyers. In the sight unseen situations, if you have a buyer who is looking at a property via FaceTime, you can tell I get nervous just talking about sight unseen, or another non-personal showing, meaning like a friend or a family member, confirm in writing that this is what they've asked of you, because we want to be able to protect where you have told them this is not the same experience as looking at a property face-to-face on your own. Also document in writing if the buyer is using not their own inspection, or let's say a plat or something that you've pulled off Register of Deeds. We want to make sure that we're confirming that they had their right to get their own, and that's what truly protects them more than any other document that they may have access to.